So I appreciate the opportunity to come back and speak. I spoke about 2 months ago, and it just so happened I was watching weather the whole day, and it snowed, and it snowed, and it snowed, and I was waiting for a call from Susan saying we're canceled. The call never came. The 4 people that were here loved the speech. Okay? I just bring that up because if you don't like it, there's something wrong with you. But so I appreciate the opportunity. I work with a company called Cisco. And we've got 70,000 employees at Cisco, and I go to a lot of internal meetings, and there's always the person who says, before we start the meeting, why don't we have an icebreaker? I mean, have you been to these meetings where they do that? So they say, well, tell us your name, and then tell us how long you've been with the company, and then tell us your favorite thing to do outside of work, and then why don't you throw in something that nobody knows about you as the icebreaker, okay? So this is, and I hate doing these things, but this is my standard icebreaker that I use all the time. So let me go through it for you. My name is Mark Clinton. I've been in the township for 28 years. My favorite thing to do outside of work is play golf. Here's a picture of me golfing. This gentleman, you can see him in the long blue pants. I don't know if you recognize him. That's Nick Price. He played on the PGA Tour. He was the Player of the Year in 1994.
I can't hear you, Mark.
Really? I'll talk a little louder. I don't need that.
Okay, well, it's right there. It's still on, so
Okay.
grab it.
But I had the opportunity to play with Nick in just a couple of years ago, but he was one of the greatest tournament players, so this was really cool. Now let's talk about the thing that you probably don't know about me, but I have to set this up a little bit. So, quiz time. Who's that gentleman there? Judd Heathcote. What about that gentleman? Roger Smith, former CEO of General Motors. This one's maybe a little tougher. Who's that?
Dan Dierdorf.
Perfect. Dan Dierdorf. Dan Dierdorf was the announcer for Monday Night Football, and now he announces the Michigan football games. Here's the thing you probably don't know about me. All 3 of these people have one thing in common. They've all been hit by my golf balls on the golf course, right? I love to play golf. I tend to hook the ball a little bit, and all 3 of these folks have paid the price of my addiction. You could probably gather by this slide, I'm a Michigan guy. You probably don't know it to look at me now, but about 39 years ago, I was a pretty good athlete. I went to University of Michigan on a baseball scholarship. This is at the time we had some great teams at the University of Michigan. I was a pitcher there for 4 years. I pitched in 3 College World Series. I was All Big Ten 1 year, academic All Big Ten 2 years. It paid for my college education. It was a great thing. Academically, I was a mathematics major, an actuarial mathematics major. You don't see a lot of the athletes at Michigan in your actuarial mathematics classes, but that's where you would find me most of the time. And after I graduated, 2 things happened. Number one, I got drafted by the Houston Astros baseball organization, and I got accepted into grad school at the University of Michigan, the MBA school. So I ended up doing both. What I would do is from March until September, I would go off and I would play baseball, and in September I would come back and work on my MBA a semester at a time. So I finally finished that off in 1984 while I was doing both things. I had a real good conversation with a gentleman who suggested, Mark, you should focus your attention on your studies. Unfortunately, that discussion was with my baseball coach as he was giving me my bus ticket home. So I did that. I focused and finished off my college education, MBA at the University of Michigan with a degree in finance. Let's talk a little about my professional career. So, immediately after I graduated, I took a job with a company called Anderson Consulting, which is now Accenture. I worked with Mike Sovol back there. I actually worked with Tammy Dorshevitz, Bob's wife, when I was there. If I could only go back in time and warn her. I think. But
Give you all her money.
But I spent a little over 9 years. I got to the point of senior manager, and then I got recruited by a company that was a legal software company. And that was in 1991, and I got recruited to be the chief operating officer. It was a small company, but about 6 months into it, the president was fired, and I was promoted to the president and CEO of this software company. So at the age of 32, I became the president and CEO of this small software company. Best 10 years of my life. We grew it from 35 to 95 people. We grew the revenues from 10 to roughly 30 million. We acquired one of our competitors in Munich, Germany. We became the number one in the world in terms of this particular legal expertise. So great 10 years of my life. After that, I was recruited by a company called Liaison. Liaison had just gone through a pretty rough time. They were under SEC violation. They filed for bankruptcy. And I was brought on by a recruiter to kind of help turn this thing around. So I became the leader of the offshore services division and try to get that in shape as well as turn this financial mess around. We did pretty well. Not great, but we did pretty well. I had a group of about 1,500 employees offshore, but it was not, to be honest, not a good 2 years of my life. We spent a lot of time closing facilities, firing people, reorganizing, right? I think in my time in business, I like building, I like hiring, I like growing as opposed to the opposite, which was cutting and slashing. But we turned it around, right? I mean, we got a pretty tough financial situation in order, and we ended up selling off the company. So I'm used to financial situations that I can turn around. I've spent the last 12 years with a technology company called Cisco as a director of sales here in the Midwest, this 12-state area. Me and two other gentlemen are responsible for roughly $2 billion in sales every single year. Tremendous company, as Bob was talking about, tremendous company, tremendous culture, tremendous people. So that's a little bit about my educational and my work background. Let's talk a little about my family. Bob put up a picture of his family. I get to put up a picture of my family. So we've lived in the township for 28 years. I've been married to my wife for coming on 30 years in September. After, and I emphasize after I win this election, I'm going to take her on one of those European riverboat cruises to celebrate our 30th anniversary. These are my three kids, Mitch, Kyle, and Lisa, all born and raised in Plymouth Township. They went to school at Our Lady Good Counsel and then all went on to Canton High School there. Lisa went on to University of Michigan, Kyle to Michigan State, and my youngest son, Mitch, to Albion. I could have put up a lot of pictures, but I put this up for a number of reasons. Number one, I really liked the picture, and number two, my tax accountant said, you can now write the whole wedding off as a campaign expense. So, which is perfect. This weekend was a milestone in my life, okay? For this reason, number one, the kid with the number one there in the purple, that's my son Mitch. He runs for Albion College. On Friday, they had their conference championships, and he won the steeplechase, so he's all-league first team. So that was a great milestone. But the other was on Saturday, he graduated. So that's my last kid out of college, right? And my dad used to always say life is kind of like a hockey game. It has 3 periods. As of Saturday, I've officially moved into the 3rd period of my life, okay? All my kids are grown, out of college, off the payroll. I want to spend the next third of my life being the treasurer of Plymouth Township, right? That's the way I want to spend it. Not on a golf course, because you see I can hurt people. I would rather be supporting the people of Plymouth Township in the role of trustee, or in the role of treasurer. So let's stop talking about me and let's start talking about the finances of Plymouth Township for, just for a minute here. Here's what you're going to hear. In fact, this glossy that was handed out will talk about the tremendous financial shape that Plymouth Township is in. And this is what you're going to hear from my opponent for the next couple of months during the campaign. He's going to say we have the lowest tax rate in the entire western subdivision area. We've kept the taxes low. We've kept the people safe. We constantly get the best audits. That's what you're going to hear from my opponent. If you take a look at my literature, the very first thing I talk about is debt and legacy costs. What I'm going to talk about today is the fact that I think we're in financial problems. We have financial problems, and that we've been kicking the can down the road for a long time. So give me a couple slides to see if I convince you that that's the case, or if you believe the literature that you read yesterday, okay? The first point is tax rate may be low, but your taxes are going up, folks. And the reason is this slide right here. It's the difference between, and I hope you understand it, you're all informed, so I'm sure you do, the difference between taxable value and assessed value. When the real estate market took off again in about 2011, that's when the spread took off. The assessed value of my house, right, is in the white. It's gone up significantly. Where the blue is the taxable value. You see the difference between the two right now is 12.8%. What that means is every single year, your taxes are going up or my taxes are going up until we close that gap of 12.8%. So whether the tax rate remains the same or not, your taxes are going up, okay?
Sorry about that, Mark.
No problem.
Shut this off.
Let's take a snapshot of the current financial picture, okay? Last year in 2015, let's see if this pointer will work. Nah, it won't go on that screen. We had revenues of roughly $14 million and expenses of roughly $14.2 million, okay? We lost about $200,000, okay? So we're not putting anything away. The general fund balance as of the end of the year was $3.6 million. Now, if you've ever worked with a financial planner, just kind of your own personal finances, what do they tell you? They tell you, make sure you've got 6 months of your revenue stashed away for a rainy day. So my calculations, if our annual budget is $14 million, I would like to see at a bare minimum $7 million in the general fund balance to make sure that we've got enough for a rainy day. So in my opinion, the general fund balance is a little low. And by the way, we lost $200,000 last year, which means it's going down. Let's talk about long-term debt. Long-term debt is $9.5 million. That doesn't really excite me. The thing that concerns me a little bit is the fact that what we've been spending and borrowing money on is really all related around recreation. It's the park, it's the golf course. Do we really have to go in debt? And as we've talked about on a number of occasions already tonight here, prioritizing recreation over public safety. If we're going to borrow money, I want to make sure that we're safe before we've got pavilions, amphitheaters, that type of thing. The other thing that was pointed out at the last meeting too is that this debt is kind of escalating. So the $9.5 million, well, let me put it another way. The money that we're paying each year to pay off the $9.5 million is going to go up a little bit because the way that the loans and the bonds are structured, it's an escalating payment, okay? Let's talk about the last two things, which are unfunded pensions and unfunded OPEB. That's what we refer to as legacy costs, okay? Legacy costs means that you've made promises today, and those promises say you have to pay these out in the future. Okay, let's start with the unfunded pension, the fire and police, right? So when these folks retire, they're going to get a pension. Today, what's unfunded is $6.2 million of that, all right? Remember, I took actuarial math classes, so I understand a little bit about this. Here's how this stuff works. These actuaries sit down, and they're pretty smart people, and they've got graphs, and they've got tables, and they've got calculations, and they figure out mathematically when these people are going to retire, what the payment is going to be. So if a person says, if a person is sitting here today and they're going to retire in 15 years, and they're going to start paying a certain amount of money in 15 years, how much money do I need put away today in order to pay for that obligation in 15 years? And what we're saying is, and in fact we brag about it in the literature, is that we're 75% funded. What that means to me is that we're 25% not funded. Okay? It's like having 4 kids and promising that you're going to pay for their college education, and when the 4th one gets there, you say, I'm sorry, I only had enough for 3. So we're unfunded to the tune of $6.2 million. What the actuaries are saying is you should have $6.2 million more put away today than you do. The bigger problem is OPEB. OPEB is other post-employment benefits. Those are the people that work in the township today and have been promised that we're going to pay for their health care benefits and the health care benefits of their families when they retire, okay? We have not put anything away for OPEB. We've got a $15.7 million problem. That means we should have put $15.7 million away in the bank today in order to fund our obligations for all these folks that are going to retire in the future, okay? So, if you look at it and you read the literature, you think we're in great financial condition. Here's one slide that shows we're running at a loss of $200,000 per year. I don't think we have enough put away for a rainy day in terms of our general budget. We've got debt, and we've got unfunded obligations, legacy costs, to the tune of about $22 million. Are we in good financial condition, or have we been kicking the can down the road? Okay. Did I convince anybody? Here's a couple those are my long-term concerns, right? Here's my short-term concerns. Sandy brought it up. The SAFER grant is expiring, or perhaps has already expired. We really don't know. That SAFER grant was $1.3 million. That was funding the salaries and the benefits of 6 firefighters. So where are we going to get the money to make sure that we continue to have that level of support? That's going to have to come out. If we don't get another grant, and there's been no talk of that, we're going to need another $1.3 million to fund, and that's 2 years, by the way, so roughly $650,000 per year to fund those 6 firefighters. Where's that money going to come from? The other one is the drug forfeiture fund. We've been getting, from 2010 to 2014, we've gotten roughly $2 million from the drug forfeiture fund, and we have to spend that on equipment for the police department and such. But what if that goes away? They already, at the state level, they already said that's probably going to go away, and then they brought it back. My point is that's kind of a fragile source of income that we really shouldn't be relying on, okay? But right now it's given us roughly $2 million over the last 5 to 6 years. Finally, let me spend a little time on this capital investment fund, okay? The capital investment fund sits here. This is what's paying off our debt. So every year we're writing a check for $790,000 to pay off that debt that I talked about. Part of that is getting funded from the general fund, okay? So the general fund writes a check for $520,000 to the capital investment fund, which then writes a check for $790,000 to pay off our debt. That capital investment fund is almost empty, okay? Which means that once that bank account has run dry, the general fund is going to have to pick up the excess. So, all right, effective, I think sometime at the end of 2017, the funding from the general fund, which today is $520, will now become $790. That's another $270,000 coming out of the general fund to pay off our debt. So those are my short-term issues, right? So the last slide was the long-term kicking the can down the road. Here's some immediate things. Are we going to get the SAFER grant? What happens when that capital investment fund runs dry and we have to continue to fund that from the general fund? Okay? So you're probably saying, well, this is just a guy who wants to win a job and will say anything to get elected. Don't listen to me. Listen to Joe Heffernan, who's the partner on the audit for Plymouth Township. Richard Charlin was kind enough to share this report with me. This is the report, the arbitration hearing between Plymouth Township and the Firefighters Association that took place in 2014. And I grabbed these quotes directly from the article, okay? So get this. This is Plymouth Township getting our audit partner from Plant Moran to testify on behalf of the township to say, we can't afford to pay the firefighters. Look at the quote. In summary, Mr. Heffernan concluded that the township should feel good about being able to manage its short-term financial condition, but on a long-term basis, the township should not feel good at all. Okay? This is the auditor who basically was hired by the township to support the fact that we are not in good financial shape in the long term to be able to pay our Firefighters Association. And then the township's post-hearing brief concludes on a basis of his testimony that Plymouth Township has a serious ability to pay issue. That's the issue that they were coming back to the Firefighters Association was, you have to make concessions because we have long-term financial problems. It's not me saying it, it's the auditor from Plant Moran who audits our books, okay? Convinced? Okay. let me conclude there, and I just wanted to say thank you. I decided to run for this, not because not because of the money, and not because of the power, and not because of the fame. I'm in that third period of my life now, and it's something that I finally have an opportunity to give back to the community. I'm not a very well-known commodity. I'll be honest, I haven't been involved in the community in politics. I've been spending an awful lot of time working, an awful lot of time traveling, an awful lot of time raising my kids. I now have the time and the ability to do this job. And really, at the end of the day, it really comes down to you folks that I've ever gotten interested in local politics. I started driving down Ann Arbor Trail, and I said, what's that recall sign? What's that all about? And then I would see Stop the Amphitheater, and then I started getting on websites, and then I started talking to people, and then I started monitoring Facebook. And the more I monitored, the more interested I got. And the more interested I got, the more angry I got. The more angry I got, I finally stood up and said, you might as well do something about it, right? Get in there and fix the problem. So that's why I'm here today, is I want to help. I want to fix the problem. No other hidden agenda except public service, fix the problem. We've been here 28 years in this community. We're crazy about it. Give me the opportunity to fix these long-term and short-term financial problems, and I can do it. Right? Thank you very much.